Welcome back to the third episode of Ask the Gunsmith. We're very excited with all the responses we've gotten so far, so please keep asking your questions. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell down below. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to put on the comments. We're going to do our best to keep trying to answer them. So let's go to our first question today. What is the difference, Dan and Braxton, between rifled, button-rifled, and hammer-forged barrels?
Yeah, I guess I'll take cut.
Okay.
Cut rifles. So cut rifle barrels typically are what we use in precision, anything that needs to be a high precision. So the way that these are manufactured, you basically take a single point cutting tool. It looks like a little hook that is a cutter, and it gets pulled through the barrel as it's rotating based upon the twist rate that is preferred or needed in that particular barrel. And it removes a very, very small amount of material, particularly like 0.0001, so a tenth basically. Every time that it goes through, it cuts a small amount of the groove for the rifling out of that barrel. So this creates a very high accuracy because we're only removing a small amount. But it's also stress-free because we're not actually inducing any stress into the metal by making these cuts. Again, it's really used for precision. That's really like higher-end precision rifles, competitive shooting, high-end rifles, and so forth. You get very consistent results every single time, very durable. And then after the fact that they're going to be hand lapped after that. So cut rifled, the biggest thing that you're going to save is there's no stress relieving in that process. So we'll get into that in a second with the button rifled barrels, but there's no stress relieving that's needed when you do a cut rifle. So basically it's this little hook that's going to be dragged through several hundred times, removing that real small amount of metal each and every time, and it's pretty much considered the gold standard. When you're looking for that ultra high precision barrel, cut rifle that's just going to be
that's your Brucks, your Bartlands, your Kriegers.
Right. They're all the high end ones. That's what you're going to get. Interestingly enough, those rifles are typically made on some of the oldest machines.
Yeah.
I mean, these machines are old. If you ever get a chance to check out any of those factories, they are made on some old machines, but they're perfect. Spot on, perfect barrels. Fantastic. Yeah, they're just phenomenal barrels. So we got button rifled.
Yep. So button rifling, unlike the single point cut where you've got one cutting tool going in and cutting it out, they have what they call a button, and it's basically a reverse image of the inside of the rifling. And there's different sizes. They start with the smallest one, and they place it at the end of the barrel, and they basically rip it through the barrel and
twisting it.
Yep. And it twists as it comes through, and that's what cuts your rifling.
Doesn't cut it.
Well, rips it out of there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But so those are going to be it's cheaper to do it that way, but it
faster
induces
as well.
It's cheaper, it's faster, but it induces a lot of stress into the barrel. And that's where you were talking about the stress relieving process. They then have to go through and relieve the stress out of them, and then a much more intensive lapping process to get them as good as they can get them. You can still have those barrels shoot really, really well. But they are not quite at the standard as the single point cut barrels. That's why we use those for like competition builds and stuff like that.
Yeah, so a lot of your more mass-produced rifles you're going to see are going to be button rifled. And with today's machines, you're able to get real high level of accuracy. I think where it really comes in is if they're done properly, if they're properly stress relieved, if it's a quality button and it's properly hand lapped, you're going to get a really good rifle out of that. If any of those steps isn't done perfectly, that's where the issues. Yeah. So it's more steps than cut, and I think that's where your deviations come. So you can get a really good one, but since there's more steps involved and more lapping involved, it's more reliant on, again, just like anything with stacking, right? Anytime you're going to stack anything, and you're going to just have you can have variances. You have less variance with a cut rifle, so you don't have as many processes that you have to take it through. So you end up. Yes, can you end up with perfect in each one and they both shoot the same? Yes, but there's a higher probability that a button could potentially have some And when we say issues, we're talking about, again, very high precision.
Yeah.
You know,
It's what separates
quarter MOA type
quarter to
guns. When you
half,
start talking to quarter half, you know, that's where we're really getting into. So it's really the fine, nitpicky type things that we get into between those two.
Yeah. Most people, unless you're shooting competition, most people aren't really going to see a difference in the two. But if you're one of those guys, yeah. If you're one of those guys that's looking to stack, like make a little tiny bug hole on the target, then single point is what you want.
All right. What about hammer forged barrels?
Hammer forged is pretty cool the way it's done. It's a massive. These are massive machines that make these. So basically, you have a barrel, steel, that's got a bore. That's got its bore hole put through it. It's also called cold hammer forging, but it's done at room temperature, so it's not
really
cold. It's just called that. There is hot hammer forging, which is different. And basically, they insert a mandrel. So basically, the mandrel has the caliber dimensions in it, and it's got the rifling in it. So basically, it's like a button, but the entire the length.
It's the whole
basically.
length.
It's the whole length.
Okay.
So that mandrel goes into that bore, and then these massive hammers come down and beat on the exterior of the rifle, conforming the interior to that mandrel, right? So, and it is massive amounts of force, obviously, because we're bending steel basically around this mandrel. We're forming the steel around this mandrel. So a tremendous amount of force. These hammers basically just compress. They go in and out. And they smack into the barrel basically, and then conform it to that rifling to the rifling that you're looking for and the caliber that you're looking for. The biggest benefit, it still allows for very high accuracy, but production speed is way faster on hammer forged.
And they're very, very durable barrels
Yes.
as well. Yep.
Okay.
So that's a hammer forging process, is one that a lot of higher end rifles, particularly like ARs and so forth, are made
Your
with
semi-autos. Yep.
semi-auto rifles, right?
What about cost? What are the pros and cons and costs?
They are a little bit expensive.
Okay.
Yep.
The hammer forged would be more
Are a little more
expensive?
expensive than your button cuts. Yep. Because I mean the machinery is more expensive.
It's massive,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you. Well, moving on to our next question. What is the difference now moving from barrels to receivers? What is the difference between a forged, a billet, and a polymer receiver, and the pros and cons of each?
So, billet is machined out of a solid block of material.
Okay.
In ARs, it's usually aluminum, 7075 aluminum.
That's what we do here,
Yep,
right?
That's what
at
we use here.
Precision?
The big benefit is you can make it look however you want. With the forging, it's very limited because it is forged to the shape of the receiver. So there's not a whole lot you can play around with it to change the looks and the lines of it. It also allows us to hold much tighter tolerances than a forging because we're starting with a block, we're controlling everything we're doing, machining the whole thing. So that it's better for accuracy, it's better for tighter tolerances, and they look significantly cooler than forged receivers, in my opinion.
You have more flexibility. It's obviously, and you can obviously we can customize it any way we want because basically we start with this block of aluminum that's like 2.5 inches thick and 8 inches long, and I want to say 4.5 inches wide, basically for a lower receiver. Upper receiver, same thing. You can do those both in those as well. But it's like an 8-pound block is what it starts at, and we take it down to like 8-9 ounces, something like that is what all the aluminum gets removed, because basically it's just a solid block of 70-75 aluminum that gets machined. We have numerous videos that we have up that kind of show that whole some of that process of how that gets done to where you just get down to this lower receiver piece. So yeah, it's a more time-consuming process, right? Because now we're removing whereas a forge is somewhat of the shape has been stamped out. So basically, it's a stamping process that basically takes aluminum and stamps into the basic shape. On a forged, we're starting with that whole block, so we have a lot more waste that we're dealing with when we deal with that, and we have a lot more processing time, cutting time, because we're cutting away everything. Whereas a forge is going to have some of the shape has already been kind of predetermined.
A lot less machining that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. What about polymer receivers? Do you recommend? And give me some.
Personally, I'm not a fan of them.
Okay.
Now,
And
if
why
you're
is that?
looking to build the lightest possible rifle you can build, they're going to be lighter than your forged or your billet receivers, but they still need to put some metal in there to reinforce some of the areas in there. I'm not a huge fan of them, but
yeah, I mean, it goes along with the same. It's almost like the bad 3D printed kind of things.
The life expectancy is going to be a lot less.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. So not that because typically a polymer is going to be like some sort of mold that's going to be done. It could be machined afterwards as well. Like you said, like if they're putting infusing metal into them, into parts of them and so forth. But yeah, durability is definitely not going to be the same as anywhere near the same as anything that's made out of 7075, just a much, much stronger material. But yes, there is a weight component to it. Yeah, I guess it's really a preference. I wouldn't say that this is an accuracy thing, right?
No,
so polymer is not going to be on the high end of any sort of accuracy from that standpoint.
Yeah. If you want to build a 4-pound rifle, polymer might be the way to go. But
all right.
Yeah, I would not be my first choice.
No, it would not.
For a rifle.
Mine either.
For me, I would, or for the receivers pieces, I would definitely stick with. Particularly, again, I mean, even if you reinforce, I'm still under the impression that I don't know that I would trust it. I've talked to some people that have not had the best experiences with them. So, not to say anything bad, but
not our preference.
Not my preference.
Okay.
Yeah, not my cup of tea.
no.
All right, since we're talking about parts, right? What about the difference between a stock and a chassis on a gun, a rifle?
So
we get this question a lot.
we do get this a lot.
Particularly
all
when
the
we're
time.
doing builds.
Just your build, you custom build.
And honestly, there's no wrong answer.
Okay.
It's kind of personal preference. Do you like the way a stock feels, or do you like the way a chassis feels? Most stocks are going to need to be bedded, which most chassis are not going to need to be. Now, there are some exceptions there. And then nowadays you have hybrids of the two, like the Manners TCS. It's a traditional looking stock, fiberglass stock, but it's got an aluminum mini chassis inside of it. So it takes out the bedding process. You get all the perks of the aluminum chassis in a stock.
Okay. What about weight?
Weight, usually the chassis are going to be a little on the heavier side.
Okay.
You can make them
for the most part.
There's a lot anymore that everyone's been working on different, and we even sell some of the rails that make make a chassis heavier. I'm sorry, make a stock heavier. I shoot too. I shoot the Manners in competition as well as the Foundation. Foundation stocks are not wood stocks. They're made from what's called micarta.
Yep.
Micarta is basically it's like paper or fabric. It's fabric really that gets pressed and glued. So it's somewhat like fiberglass, incredibly durable.
Very solid.
Extremely solid. I mean, when we were talking about when Braxton was saying that you have to bed them, it is one of the few that I would say a stock that is truly does not need to be bedded
they do
at all.
such a good job with the inlets. There's no need to bed them.
Yep. It's a phenomenal inlet that gets done for those. It's very precise. It's just absolutely perfect, basically.
What about considering adjustments?
So adjustments is really where a stock can have less adjustments, particularly if you have to make them fast, right? So whereas like on a lot of the chassis systems, you can quickly adjust your riser, your cheek riser. Okay. You can quickly adjust your length of pull, right? On a stock, even if it has those adjustments, it's more tool intensive and time intensive than what you're going to find on a chassis system. A chassis, just because of its nature, is going to allow for more components and things to be added onto it.
You can add more weights to them.
You can add weights. Yeah, there's places to add the weights. There's M-lock on it. You can add M-lock weights. You can do all these various little kind of tweaks to a chassis that are not as easy to do. Not to say that, again, Foundation makes a number of different accessories that go on that kind of give a lot of that feature.
Okay.
But so, and my personal, the reason I shoot a stock over a chassis is just, I've tried both. I come from a shotgun background, and it just feels like every time I shoot a chassis, not that I feel like there's any benefit or loss, it really is my own mental state when I'm shooting something. I just feel more connected to a stock than I do connected to a chassis. Okay. I personally like a lot of the way the chassis look, and that's why
they look
super cool.
They look cool, right?
They look cool,
and they I don't need the adjustments, I feel, because if I can get, as long as the adjustments are there, I don't make them on the fly. I'm not changing. Like my rifle is set up and it's meant for me. So it's going to be set up and everything's going to be configured to me. I don't worry about necessarily the quick adjustments that may be needed. So I end up just, my preference, because of maybe just how I feel connected to that rifle, I feel more solid. I feel like it's all a mental thing. And you could go the exact opposite way with that. And you could say a stock doesn't feel connected to me and a chassis does feel connected. Whatever, I would definitely say before you buy either one, you definitely want to try to get behind one.
Yeah, try to get hands on them.
Hands on.
See how they feel.
If you can go to, if you're shooting PRS or any of the competitions, to try different guys' rifles out. If you can get behind a stock and behind a chassis and behind different chassis, because different chassis are different. Always a benefit to be able to try something, because it really is that personal preference that if you didn't try it, you might love, again, I love the way a chassis looks. Can't shoot it as well. Not because it doesn't shoot well, but because mentally it just, in my head,
works better for you.
Just doesn't work the same.
Yeah, you're sitting there worrying about how you feel behind the gun. You're could mess up your order, the targets in the order you need to shoot them, or it's going to throw you off your game. And the more comfortable you are behind your platform, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the key, is really on that. There's not, now if we get into like wood stocks and so forth, that there's a whole aesthetic to, like, if you want, like, there's Turkish walnut stocks and so forth that are just a different level. We're not looking for accuracy. We're looking, this is more of aesthetic, pleasing of what a Turkish walnut, like, handcrafted stock that's been hand checkered and all that. I mean, it's just,
some of those.
they're just beautiful, like absolutely
pieces
like
of art.
pieces of art. Exactly. That's what it gets into,
absolutely.
right? And that's a whole different topic.
It's a whole different can of worms.
Stock. When we say stock, these are typically, when you're talking about stocks that we're talking about, are not. That's you know,
they're generally fiberglass stocks. Your Macmillans, your TC or your Manners.
Yep.
That kind of stock. Yep. Foundation.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Preference, guys, all about preference. We have one more question. So, some guns, you acquire them and they're shooting perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden they are not holding the zeros anymore. So, the question is, why isn't my gun being as accurate as it used to be? Why is it not shooting well?
So there is a whole long list of things that could cause this.
So we're going to go over a couple of them.
Yeah.
That you can kind of check yourself. I think that's really like, look, check these things before you have to take it to somewhere or take it to a gunsmith, because these are things that could be something very simple that, hey, it's this, and you wasted time, money, and so forth, because if you knew about this, hey, this is what I would check first. But doesn't mean that this is what we're talking about right now is not going to be an exhaustive list by any means, but it's kind of the more simple ones that you can kind of think of that are out there. So
Okay.
So the first things to look at are your action screws. Make sure they're still tight. Make sure they haven't come loose. If those are tight, check your scope rings, check your scope base. Anything that is bolted onto the rifle, if any of those things come loose, it can start causing issues with the accuracy.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the first thing to check.
And you want to know the torque spec as well, right? So every manufacturer, scope rings, bases, the action screws. The actions typically will tell you what the torque spec is going to be for that. If not, there are generalities that you can use for that if you can't find it or you don't know exactly what it is, but try to find the spec, because some of them can be quite different. Like I know, like arc mounts and so forth
like
can
the,
be
the M mounts are
very
specific.
To what you're doing. So that can, and the reason that's important is, like, if you torque it wrong, like let's say that the spec says whatever, and you put too much pressure, like let's just say a scope, for instance, you can bend that scope. And if you're bending and putting stress into that scope, realize that there's the erector that's inside, that you actually start to twist that. So you get a couple of things. Number one, it won't return to zero properly, because when you're dialing it up and down, there's pressure on it, so it's not able to get that same. So when it's moving your reticle inside there, you're not getting to the same spot every single time, because you've put stress into that scope. So the way scope rings really are intended to work is that they clamp down hard enough on the scope itself, on the tube, but are not putting any sort of stress, which is why they a lot of times on older scope rings. Now, if you get a good quality scope rings or scope mount in today's world, you don't have to bed them, but you used to bed them to get any of that stress out. And the scopes are really well manufactured as well. So it used to be something you'd hear like, oh, I'm going to bed, you'd bed actually your scope rings even
either
to
bed
make
them
it
or lap them or something.
Yeah, to make them a perfect fit, because it's so particular scope can be very critical into why you're not seeing something shoot, and it's really important to check that.
So that will be one of the first things to check.
Yeah, that'd be
check
the
all
first
your
thing.
screws
And then on the
and all the torque
what's the next
specs.
level?
So the next thing, and this is more common with, we'll say, hunting rifles than like match rifles.
Okay.
You're out in the woods, everyone's slipped and fall. Like you slip, you fall, you bang your rifle
Drop
up.
your gun. Yep.
Yep. Maybe the crown got dinged and there's a little bit of a burr now hanging over into the bore. That's going to throw your bullets off. It's going to cause massive accuracy issues. So that's something you can look at.
Easy way to check too is you take a Q-tip.
Yep.
You just take a Q-tip, push it in to the crown, and pull it out. And if you get any sort of, if it pulls, you should not get any of the little fibers or the cotton fibers pulled off. If you see like, oh, it's got a couple of cotton fibers. Cotton fibers got pulled off in an area.
Relate.
That's probably a burr that's sitting
there.
there, and then that's not something I would recommend taking care of yourself.
Yeah, that's something you got to take to a gunsmith.
You definitely want to take to a good gunsmith.
Yes,
we'll say.
a good one.
not any gunsmith. Take it to a reputable gunsmith that can help resolve that issue, because it can be fixed. But it's the crown is one of those things that's basically the last point of contact a bullet has before it leaves and goes into the world. It needs to be perfect at that point. If it's not, it's definitely going to cause accuracy
So one more
issues.
item to add to your bag, Q-tip.
Yep.
Okay.
And then
Go ahead.
and then the next thing, which kind of lends back to our first episode, is your gun dirty? Yep. Is it super dirty? Is it causing issues because of how dirty it is? That will definitely cause rifles to stop shooting properly if they get to a point where there's excessive buildup in the barrel or in the chamber.
And you can get what's called a carbon ring, which is another, can be difficult to get out. It can actually require scrubbing of the chamber. You have to be very careful when trying to remove that. You're not damaging the chamber, and you want to get it clean, and you want to get this carbon ring out. And that, again, if you clean the bore of the rifle, it could all look good, but you have this carbon ring which comes back off of that, and it's in the neck. And basically, if you almost have to bore scope it at that point to know that you have a carbon ring. But basically, it's just a buildup of carbon from basically when that bullet gets fired. The carbon, I'm sorry, the powder burns, and you get that buildup right behind as it comes back, and then it builds up. So, and certain calibers are just notorious for having that issue. Brass sizes and so forth, again, have the same, can all lend itself to ones that have that issue on them. So that's something you want to definitely check. Dirty chamber is kind of along the same lines as a carbon ring that can also have issues with that accuracy and so forth of the rifle.
Okay. Any other issues that could be addressed before you send to the gunsmith?
So we have we have our video that we posted about barrel being shot out.
Okay.
Shot out barrel.
So there is a point in time that a rifle is shot out. And I know just from personal experience, I had six Creedmoors are typically run hot. It's a hotter load.
They're barrel burners.
And they burn out barrels quicker. So most people find on a Creedmoor, and what I had on mine, and again, in competition, I was getting like really weird and it was very random. Every maybe 20 to 50 shots, I would get a round that would come out.
It'd just go off into nowhere.
Like I had one, I think it ended up like 400 yards short of the target. Like it just,
that's huge.
Didn't nothing, like who knows what happened. But I saw it the first time, and then it would happen every once in a while. So it was enough to me to know that it wasn't, and this was using factory ammunition. So I knew it wasn't the way I was loading or anything like that. This was just simply, hey, the barrel's probably, there's something going on with the barrel. And at this point, since it's so random, not worth trying to chase what it could be. So it was just like, look, it's just time to replace the barrel at that point. That you can also have it where they open up. So if you're grouping at 100 yards, you start seeing it open up. That's also a barrel being shot out.
Also, if you're one of those guys that's always got a chronograph on their gun when they're at the range shooting it, you'll start to see your extreme spread and your SDs start to open up a little bit.
Yeah, all that's going into that. The other thing I would do is I would look for any changes that you made to the rifle. So anything that you did between last season and this season, let's say it's a hunting rifle and last season, but then you got this new scope or you got something new, it's not tested. So you're not comparing apples to apples at that point anymore. You're really comparing something that you've changed to the rifle. Try going back. Maybe would be the first thing. Like, hey, as a simple test, I changed scopes. Let me see if I go back. If it shoots right with the one scope and it doesn't shoot right with the new scope, there could be a problem with the brand new scope. I mean, there could always be an issue. Yeah, it happens that there's just a problem with the scope. The erector and side light doesn't track properly, right? So you're coming back down, and you know one way that happens a lot is in competition we dial sometimes fairly high for longer distance shots, and our return to zero isn't always perfect. So there's a way of testing. You basically do like kind of a ladder test where you shoot it out. You take your way up. You're shooting 15 mil or something like that. And then you bring it all the way back down to your 100-yard range, and you shoot, and did it return perfectly to the same 0 point? So scopes can have issues. So I would always say, like, look, anything, a muzzle brake that you changed, right? You got it, the barrel threaded. You're shooting with a suppressor that you didn't shoot with last. All of those, anything that's been a change, potentially could be causing that. So anything that you could easily enough change back to would be something I would first. That's just it's like an easy thing. Like, hey, I made these changes. Any different changes that you made, go back to the way it was when it was shooting well.
See if it still shoots.
And see if it still shoots. If it is, well, now you know it's one of, because maybe you added 5 different things. Maybe you changed the muzzle brake, did a different scope, changed the rings, did whatever. Put it all back the way it was, shoot it again. If it goes back, well, one of those things is causing a problem. Then maybe you want to just add them one at a time back to kind of figure out what.
Yeah, try and isolate the issue.
Trying to isolate the issue. And again, that's just something that it could be causing an issue with that. You can also have on the wood stocks, you really need to make sure on a wood stock, if you have an older rifle, particularly that's a wood stock, and you don't put it away or store it in a temperature controlled, humidity controlled environment, it can warp. It's wood. It can change its shape.
It can soak up some humidity, and it can expand a little bit.
Expands a little bit.
Pressure points on your barrel.
Yep.
Wow.
So you want to make sure that you're doing that, because that could have happened, right? If it's a wood stock, any of those things could have changed. If those changed and it's putting stress into the action, touching the barrel in a particular spot, maybe it was real close to touching the barrel, the way it was inlet, and now it is touching the barrel. That's going to cause. That's
going to mess with your harmonics and mess with the accuracy.
Yeah.
All right, that's great information. That's stuff that I wouldn't think of. A lot of them, and so maybe our listeners or the people watching us probably wouldn't consider either. So thanks for joining us today. We appreciate all the support we've been getting on those videos. Please keep commenting, like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. This helps us tremendously to beat all the algorithms and. Should I say that?
That's good.
Oh,
we like YouTube. YouTube is great. We love it. But without your help and so forth and everything you guys do, it's that's why the subscription and so forth all helps with our channel, and then just allows us to continue posting all this stuff.
Lets us know what you like and what you don't. And
Absolutely.
What you can do in the future.
We love the comments.
Yeah, please keep commenting. Please keep asking questions. We're going to try to answer them, like we said, in the next episodes. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and check those videos here. Check our other videos as well.